Have you been bit? I said, have you been bit? Well, get in here then. Well, I'm glad you're not dead. Welcome to the guild. You know what annoys me about the apocalypse? Is since America got completely irradiated and everyone died, there's no Americans here anymore, and they offer so much opinion into the world that I feel like the world has just gone slightly quieter. What do you think?
Well, I'd have to agree with that. I mean, I'm glad to have made it here, finally. I feel a little bit safer with everybody around me here.
Oh my God! So you made it over from the Irradiated States of America, then?
Yeah. It was quite a swim, and I had Clef and Richie on my back, unfortunately, but.
Hey, thanks for bringing us.
I appreciate that.
But they're both so lithe and slim and beautiful that it shouldn't have been any hassle whatsoever. No.
No. We did a lot of games talking on the way over. So
Yeah.
that made the time pass.
Well, we caught that dolphin at one point. That helped.
Yeah, hitching a ride.
Yeah.
And did you eat the dolphin afterwards?
Ooh. I think that's. I don't think that's the right thing to do.
No, but I mean, there's no humans around to rape the world of its natural resources anymore. One dolphin is perfectly fine. Don't worry about it, James.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, then you don't have to feel so bad about that baby seal either, Clef.
Well, I heard all of you are particularly into clubbing, so it makes sense.
Yeah, right.
After a good night of board gaming, that's what we like to do. Yep.
So yeah. Anyway, well, it's lovely to meet you. So which part of America did you come from?
I think we've all grown up in kind of the Midwest area. Richie a little bit more east.
A little east, but still Midwest, Ohio.
Yeah. And then I'm originally from Kansas City, which is straight in the Midwest, and Chad is...
I'm an Iowa boy, still Midwest.
Yep.
So basically places that no one's ever heard of. Is that what we're trying to say here?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Pretty much.
But
I mean, how did you feel that your most famous son, Marlon Brando, rose from the death as a zombie and is now currently doing theatre performances somewhere in the compound? I mean, you must feel really great about that, no?
Well, it's not that much different from his performance in Island of Dr. Moreau, but yeah, it's it has been kind of surprising.
Anyway, so I've been driving around on my Segway around the compound, and I've been asking people questions. And most of the time, people are suffering huge PTSD, so they don't answer. But occasionally, people chime in and they say certain things. And so, I thought that maybe you guys might want to chip in. You sound like... I mean, you're American, so clearly you have opinions, no?
I would say I definitely have opinions.
The best opinions.
Yeah. Most intelligent opinions.
Well, yeah, before the apocalypse, there was a man who claimed to have the best of everything, the best languages, the best words, and he clearly had nothing to do with the apocalypse.
Clearly.
So basically, what I asked the people in the compound, to stretch a thin premise even thinner, is how important are components to you in a game? And I assume you look like three guys for whom components are essentially the most vital thing, no?
No.
I would say they're pretty important.
Yeah, don't listen to Clef. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
No, I do know what I'm talking about, and it is not the most vital important to a game.
So are you saying that you if you have a choice of wooden cubes or beautifully sculpted lapis lazuli figures, that makes no difference to you?
Nope. Give me cubes. I just played Kalis yesterday, right before we took off for the zombie apocalypse here, and those cubes that you have to pick up, just fine. Don't bother me at all. I don't need anything special.
The thing is, dolphins have quite a lot of sort of space on them, so I'm sure you were fine playing games
Yes.
on the back of a dolphin.
Yes.
You haven't.
So I mean, how do you? So you seem very, forthright and sure about this. So what is the difference between playing a prototype and playing a published game? If we say all the rules are down, the gameplay is fine, the only difference is the art on the board, the art on the cards, the things you manipulate with your hands, then what's the difference?
Well, I mean, I would say the difference between a prototype and a game that's published is prototypes can have, hard to understand language because it's still just kind of a prototype. Where a regular,
but what I said was everything's the same. Okay.
Okay.
So the rules are down. The words on the cards are down. Everything's down just before it goes to the publisher, a day before it gets sent to the printer.
Yeah.
What's the difference between playing sort of, index cards and a cardboard board with drawing on it to playing a finished game? Because surely there must be a difference now.
Okay, and I feel bad that I'm talking about all this here with you guys not talking, but here's what I'll say. Components enhance a game. It can make it a nicer experience to play. Don't get me wrong. I like, if you look at Brass Original and Brass Now, sure, Roxley's version is very beautiful and it's nice to look at. But to me, I will still play that almost prototype game that's ready to go to the publisher and still enjoy the mechanics, or the mechanisms, I should say, just as much.
But
no, you can say mechanics, it's fine. Mechanics is fine. I looked at this in the dictionary because people argued with me. Mechanics is fine, mechanic isn't.
Okay.
Apparently.
Good. All right.
So you go for it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you two gents seem to be defenders of the component. Ooh, what do you think about this?
I think Clef is wrong for sure.
Thanks.
You need nice components. Now, if the only option is the original Brass, and that might be the case, especially during the zombie apocalypse, fine, I'll take it. But if those two are sitting next to each other, which one are you going to pick up?
But what is the difference, though? What does it give you that sort of basic components don't?
It just gives you that nice tactile feel when you have really nice components. It also, just visually, who likes to look at ugly things all the time? Like the original Brass for like an hour or 2 hours. I want nice components that I can throw around the table. I like nice art that I can actually look at and not be disgusted by.
And Richie replaces all his wooden dice in games most of the time with big chunkier dice.
Yeah,
he will hunt down colors that match the game and do that as well. So,
for what reason?
Wooden dice are terrible. They're too light. It's just they feel really cheap.
And so is that more a tactile thing as opposed to an aesthetic thing? They feel better as opposed to look better.
Yeah, definitely that's more tactile than anything else.
And I would say that's an important thing to think about too, because one of the things I like about board gaming is the tactile nature. Now, Richie will play on the iPad or things of that sort. He'll play some of those board games on that. I can't do that because I like the tactile feel of things in my hand and that sort of thing as well. So,
I've tried many times to play these board game apps, and I think kind of the reason I play board games is because they're willfully anachronistic, right? In a world where we're more and more compelled to spend all of our lives on the computer, something that just completely says no to the digital seems incredibly liberating for me. And I've tried playing these games and they don't have the same thing, especially because, I can't sit across the table from someone and hate them as... because you get real visceral hate when someone is 2 foot away from you. You can't have that over the internet, it seems.
It's very true. So I would guess though that means one of your favorite games through the ages. You don't play that app then?
Often. What often? For someone who plays as many games as I do, and I'm sure you guys are the same. Often is, if you can play a game 6 times a year, that's often, right? Even though that seems such a small number. So I try and get through the ages in as often as possible. And yeah, other games will have for me a blast at the beginning where I play them 5, 6, 7 times, and then they never get played again and they sit there collecting dust. Through the Ages is something that comes out regularly.
And even on the app for you?
I've never played the app, so I don't know.
Okay, yeah, that was what I was curious about. Well, I just want to refute something that Clef said, because he is a backer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this game that's coming out soon, Barrage by Simone Luciani. We wanted to make sure that we got this game, and he went to the all-in level. He backed for the 3D board with like big terrain on it and waterfalls and that sort of thing.
So explain this. Defend yourself.
All right, I'm going to defend myself very easily here, okay? It wasn't the fact that I wanted the terrain board or the components or anything. It's that if you didn't back at all, you didn't get extra cards and extra things that would be for the game. That's why I went all in on Barrage. But let's look at the other example. Lustanza, that's coming out here soon. I just got the basic version. I did not pick up the deluxe version because all it added was extra components, and it was like $20 more, and I said no.
But you're telling me you don't get a little tickle in the stomach when you think of that 3D board and all those juicy components that are not the same as the basic one.
Like I said, I think components can add to an experience. Like I like metal coins, or I like even the brass poker chips. I like to use those. There are things that I like that can enhance the game. What I'm saying is I don't have to have them. And Ben, I'll tell you this story here. Just the other day, Chad said that he is waiting to play Yokohama again, will not play it again until he gets the chunky bits. And I said, that's ridiculous. You're trying to tell me you're not going to play a game because you don't have deluxe chunky bits.
I mean, thankfully, I have deluxe chunky bits and I carry them with me at all times. So I'm one of those fortunate people who is genetically fortunate. So we'll go on to Dave Aldinger. Is Dave the Swabian, which is confusing me because it's an American flag on his profile and Swabia is in Germany. But he says, as always, the answer is incredibly subjective to individuals' taste as well as the individual game. I like components that add to the theme and the ease of play without adding complexity, or that even better, remove complexity. Does this make sense? Can components remove complexity from a game?
I would say yes. We just recorded our Carpe Diem review, and we talked about how the components in that game actually hinder gameplay. Do they hinder it to the point where you can't play it? No, but do they hinder the gameplay? Your first couple of plays, I would say they sure do.
But can they enhance it? Can they enhance the way the game? And so I guess we're not talking about iconography here. I guess we're talking about components. How do the components in Carpe Diem hinder the play?
So I don't think they hinder. The components do not necessarily hinder the play. The iconography or the graphic design may hinder the play a little bit.
Well, if we're
talking
talking
about
about
the components,
if we're talking about art, the color choice, he's including art. I think the color choice definitely did to a certain extent. It's hard to. Would you agree, Richie?
It's hard to tell the difference between some of the tiles. So I mean, it definitely slows down gameplay.
And I guess my question is: are games utilizing all of the senses? So how important is touch? How important is smell? How important is vision? Or are they things that dwell within the brain? Because I guess Clef is trying to say that actually games don't live on the table. They live within the brain. All the components are ways of tracking what's happening in everyone's brain at one moment. So are games things that fire all the senses or not?
for me, what you just said is probably what for me happens. Is I live inside the game in my head. I don't need a big miniature, cool mini or not, or CMON or whatever. Those I don't need to play a game. I'm just fine having an idea that a little cube is a cloth or a gold or whatever the case is. That lives inside my head for the game itself. I don't need those extra things. Like I'll keep saying, I'm not saying I'm against it. And if somebody has a beautiful deluxe version of something, I'm not saying it doesn't make it nicer. I'm just saying I don't have to have it.
Does it make it better though? It's not makes it nicer, because nice is one thing. Does it make it better? Does it enhance your experience? Is the game more enjoyable?
No. I will stand by this and
crazy.
say no. It does not make the game more enjoyable. Brass is not more enjoyable because it's a beautiful version. Brass is beautiful because it's an amazing fucking game. I'm okay to say that on this show, right?
You're absolutely fine within the confines of this compound. You can use whatever language you want. The rest of humanity has died. I think we can give ourselves swear words. But I have an example here. I played Rising Sun.
Okay.
And a friend of mine backed the Kickstarter. And it has, the Kickstarter components are astonishing and incredibly tactile. And there's a lot of Bakelite things, and Bakelite feels good. And it makes nice chinky sounds when you put it together.
Absolutely.
And to play the retail version of that game now would be non-workable for me. Because I've seen, and because there is something unquantifiable, I think, about the way things feel in your hands, no?
And that's what I was saying when we were talking about the deluxe version of Yokohama. My friend has the deluxe version of Yokohama, and it's very disappointing to play my copy with the cardboard chits now. Don't get me wrong, I love that game, and probably I was overstating my case, but it makes a difference to play the game with those components. And actually, in this case, what I was talking about is I thought it's actually easier to teach the game to new gamers the way that the components are set up. So I can agree in that case.
So moving on, then we'll go on to the beautiful zombie that is Anthony Boydell, and he says, unless you're a pervert who likes abstract, it's essential, nay mandatory, that you have good components and good art. Otherwise, you should get in the sea. And you've just come out of the sea, so I'm sure you don't want to get back in there. Even chess has pieces that look like Yoda and Darth Vader and Gandalf and things. And of course, you can turn a sow's ear into a silk purse, as been demonstrated many times in recent years. This, I think, is the central thing that I don't agree with the estimable Tony about. Can components turn a sow's ear into a silk purse?
No.
I think they may get you to buy it, but it doesn't make it a great game afterwards.
Maybe.
Okay, give us an example.
Splendor. Splendor is better with the poker chips than whatever they ended up doing. Like, that game is just better when you have the poker chips. Overall, it is a much more enjoyable game.
That's not what I'm asking though. Can you make a game that is bad good with components?
My answer is 100% no. If a game sucks, it sucks. I don't care how beautiful the components are. I don't care how much work they've put into it. I'm not trying to throw different games under the bus here, but recently I got the Kickstarter version of Crusaders in, and I'm sorry, that game just was not a very good game. It looked beautiful. The components were amazing. It even had like a little sword for the first player marker that was just all over the top, but the game just sucked, and so I'm never going to play it again. So the components just do not make a difference when you're talking about a bad game making it better.
So I guess my question has to come down to, what are you in it for? Why are you gaming? Is it for some sort of thematic immersion? Is it for a sort of intellectual stimulation? Is it for that sort of puzzle thing? And I guess, I don't know, because I find it weird, because I'm very much a Eurogamer, and I very much, when games claim to be thematic, it rings alarm bells for me. What thematic says to me is usually the mechanics are shit, and they have some flavor text which is poorly written. That's what it usually means. That's what all the Arkham games are, essentially. And yet, I have no interest in prototypes. They don't interest me. If anyone says, can you play my prototype? It may be the best game in the world, but it doesn't deliver me the same experience. And so I guess, what are you lot into the games for? Are you into it for the immersion, or is it something different?
I would say it falls into a little bit of everything. I want to have a puzzle that breaks my brain, but it's the experience around the table. Like we talked about, it's having that other person there with you. And it is the clink of the poker chips in my hand that I keep messing with. It is the bake-like tiles that, as I set them down, feel so satisfying. It does involve the other senses. I mean, the whole Punchboard Paradise name that we came up with is part of that. The smell of the cardboard as you punch it out. All those things, I think, at least from my perspective, play into it.
And I would agree. I want it all. So I want good people around the table. I want good components. I want good art and a good game. And I don't necessarily think that components can take a bad game that's truly bad and make it good, but it definitely takes a game that is, maybe mediocre or good and can take it to a the next level.
So I was shooting zombies going around the perimeter the other day, and I shot in the head the former doyen of board game art, Ian O'Toole. And, I mean, I was quite...
Chad just...
Yeah, I was quite sad that he'd become a zombie. But, Chad, how much, expressed as a percentage, could Ian O'Toole improve a game?
I think, and this is partly based on your interviews before the zombie apocalypse, I think he looks into game design and plays the game quite a lot. And so the way that he looks to design a game makes it more easily played. I think he pays attention to making a game design or a graphic design that will help the game along for people learning the game. I also just love his color palette too. So, I mean, obviously, I think that he is essential. And for me, if he's designing a game, or if he's doing the graphic design and art for a game, I'm definitely going to look into it. Now, if it is an Arkham game like you talked about, then that might not be my kind of thing, but I'll definitely look at it. So art from Ian O'Toole makes a difference, and I'm not happy with you for. I mean, even with his zombie brain, I'm wondering if he could have squeezed out one or two more graphic designs. So
well, unfortunately, he did. As he fell over, a few sheafs of paper blown in the wind, and frankly, they were gorgeous. I mean, they were just pictures of brains, but nevertheless, they were wonderful.
I'm curious if you, because I know you are a D&D gamer, I'm curious if when you set up a D&D campaign that you manage, how much do you get out a map? How much do you set out? Does everybody have a miniature?
No,
how does that work for you?
It's all. The thing is, I'm a words rather than pictures person. So I can't draw to save my life, but I can write a good sentence and I can tell a good story. And also being an actor, it's about delivering your lines well. So D&D for me is very much about immersing people in the situation by the way I talk. But also, I mean, actually, this is a slight diversion, but I'll go into it. I find being a dungeon master, it's best if you talk less and you present a situation and then you allow people to sort out their own issues. There's nothing worse than a dungeon master that won't shut their mouths, And your role is not to write a book. The players write the book. You just give them the opportunity to do so. So I want to go on to Ben Tinney. He's penguinized. Yes, if money were no object, we would all like every game to look like Mechs versus Minions. But if a game is good enough and something I feel will be a long-standing part of my collection, I'm all for cosmetic expansion and aftermarket bling. Now, firstly, because I used to do this a lot, and I don't do it anymore, I would buy a game and then I would go out and find little bits that I could stick into it. Do any? I mean, you've got the plastic dice, of course. I mean, do you do this? Do you bling your games?
Well, Clef, I know when he went to Gen Con a few years back, spent a lot of money on coins for his games that he could use in most every game. He spent quite a bit of money.
Yes, but that was for not a specific game. That was just simply I had coins that I could use because let's face it, a lot of games, okay, this is where you're going to try to trap me, okay? But yes, a lot of games have really crappy coins. I mean, take like Newsfjord, for example.
Newsfjord is egregious, though. I mean, that's clearly the worst thing I've ever seen. And I've lived through the apocalypse, by the way.
I agree. I did spend a little bit of money on the metal coins just because they did. I do like the feel of metal coins. All right. You got me there. All right. I do like that. But I still will say this. It doesn't necessarily make the gameplay any better for me. It's just a nice little touch.
No, explain this, though. You need to explain this now, because then why? If it doesn't make the gameplay better, what do you mean by gameplay? And again, it comes back to this thing. Is gameplay purely intellectual, or is gameplay everything that happens in the physical space in which you're playing the game?
Well, gameplay is definitely, I mean, there's the mental aspect of it, but for sure, it's everything that's happening around the gameplay. I play games because I love the social interaction. I can't just like you. I can't play games on these websites or on these apps or whatever because I just don't get that same excitement or that feeling out of it. It just doesn't work for me. I play games because I like to sit down at a table and physically be with people, and I like to physically touch I like the physical touch of the things. I'm just saying that it doesn't, I like touching the stuff, but it doesn't have to be blinged out stuff for it to still make the experience good for me. Maybe the same like you said with the D&D thing where it's in the mind. I can get past shoddy components and still enjoy the gameplay. I don't have to have it perfect, but like I said, I do like to have nice coins, or at least nicer coins than maybe most games give us, so I don't know. Maybe I'm contradicting myself. The zombie apocalypse has made me all crazy.
Well, absolutely. I mean, riding on a dolphin for that long is going to make you crazy, I'm sure. So we're going to go on to Richard Trout now. And I don't want to give you PTSD from the name Trout, but that's his name. There's nothing I can do. This is Norkel, and he's all the way in Australia, which I hear is now a wasteland full of radioactive blancmange, but nevertheless. So it says, a sow's ear is no use to anyone, but would anyone deny that Root or Everdell would have been less thought of had they been cardboard chits and cubes? I can't imagine, though, Root being the same experience without the screen-printed meeples, without the beautifully whimsical art. It becomes something else, no?
I absolutely 100% agree with you. It makes Cole Worley's design that much more subversive, and it's very clever on the part of, I think it's Kyle Ferrer, maybe. Yeah, and you're right. I mean that production makes it something else, and has sucked a lot of people who aren't war gamers into a war game.
Yeah, if that was just chits and counters, that game just wouldn't work for me, at least.
I mean,
those meeples bring it out.
Yeah, I mean, it takes, for me, a GMT game has to have a really interesting theme for me to think I want to play it, no?
Right, yes. I mean, the sort of counterinsurgency things and playing, suicide bombers and stuff, I think can turn a lot of people off. And so I think that really, if you look at it, though, the Woodland faction, they're cute and cuddly and look like little green toasts.
Right. And they're terrorists.
Yep.
There's a great example of, even with, I thought the art was cute and, certainly the woodland creatures. For me, since the gameplay was not what I like, and I understand obviously it's a great game and a lot of people love it, it's just not for me. Art and components did nothing for me. Didn't help me out at all.
But to what degree with Root? So, Richie, you like Root, but to what degree did the subversive nature of the artwork contribute to your enjoyment of it?
I would say it's huge because with that theme, and although I don't always get into the theme, with that theme, that artwork just it just really encompasses the game perfectly, and it really kind of brings you into that game, brings you into the different factions, and it makes it all make sense. And if that was just, chits and counters on the table and, let's say it's, the Revolutionary War or something like that, it's just not enjoyable.
So we're going to go on now to Sir Alex Ansari. And he says something interesting, which is sort of taking it in the other direction. He says, good components and artwork are not going to make me enjoy a bad game, but it will make a game I like even better. Functional components and art is much more important to me. I remember being turned off by the tree in Everdell. I couldn't understand the purpose of having a giant piece of cardboard blocking my view of half the table. I have a few games that would be described as lookers. That wouldn't be described as lookers, but the play makes up for it. So good components just make me enjoy games I already like even more. So is there a thing, and especially I guess with CMON this is an issue, is there such a thing as overproduction?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely, there are games like Council of 4, which is from CMON, is overproduced for sure with the minis. But it doesn't bother me. I would rather have it overproduced than underproduced. Let's say Vegas Showdown has paper mats for your different player mats. I would rather them put more money into it than just give me sub-quality components.
And I think that actually falls into who you were talking about before. One of the people who posted was talking about the money involved, the cost of the game. So recessed player boards are a thing now. Everybody wants a recessed player board. Give me that recessed player board. Well, that is a lot of money to produce, because then you have to have something or someone to stick it on, to stick that second layer on, and it drastically increases cost. So I think that's an interesting question to think about, because, how much are you willing to pay for a game? And again, then I think gameplay goes into it. Like, if you're talking about, like you said, six times a year, feels like a lot for us to play a game. Well, how many plays are you going to get out of it?
Yeah, I would echo the fact. I think you can overproduce a game, and then in a way you possibly could make a game more expensive to then have to purchase for this overproduced game, where sometimes you could cut back. And we've had this argument about Carpe Diem on the fact that yes, they could have made it a lot better, but then it would have cost them a lot more to produce it. And I'm talking from a publisher standpoint here, but if they would spend a ton of money to produce it, how much more do they actually sell of a game? Now, I don't know those numbers, but I think Carpe Diem sells because it has, the name Stefan Feld on there. It doesn't really matter what the components are. And so if they would have spent double the amount of money to produce a game, is it really going to sell that much more when it's something like a
Well, I think there are two sort of pillars of overproduction that have seemed to be an issue in the last few years. So you have, firstly, Kickstarter, and secondly, Tom Vassell has really talked about how much he loves production and he loves minis. And to what degree do you think these propel game publishers into doing things they needn't?
Yeah, well, Kickstarter would be 100%, because obviously everybody wants those Kickstarter stretch goals. Oh, look, now my mini has, a little pointy head as opposed to just a round head. And now this card comes with a special, something or other, or this, or, recessed boards. Yeah, that Kickstarter is a huge, huge problem to me for all the amount of extra bling that are in games.
And that's interesting. I hadn't thought about the Vassal effect, but yeah, that definitely makes sense.
I mean, the thing is, I think overproduction is a bit like pornography. The difference between pornography and erotica is you can't exactly say what it is, but you know it when you see it, right? And there's a brilliant game that I think is the sort of poster child for being hurt by overproduction, and this is Dogs of War. Have any of you played Dogs of War? It's a wonderful game by Paolo Mori. It's a tug-of-war game. It's super fun. It's sort of light to medium weight. And it came with this CMON production with these sculpted busts. And it just... The gameplay didn't sync with the production of it. So I think, something like, again, Rising Sun fits with its production. I think you should tailor your production to the game, right? And I think that a Clemens Franz cover will do much more for a game than plastic pieces, no?
Heartily agree with that one.
Yeah, and especially, with that game especially, because it probably attracted the wrong crowd and pushed away, the crowd that would actually enjoy that game.
I think you could argue the same in some ways for something like Scythe. Scythe had problems, I think, because of expectation that it was going to be, you had this art that had these big mechs, and then you had these huge minis and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people picked up that game thinking it was going to be heavy combat and that sort of thing. And I think that it didn't do as well with some people because their expectation was that. And you've got a little bit of a Euro efficiency game in there with your player boards and production and that sort of thing.
And so just to wrap up then, can you have, because I think we all agree that you can have a good game with with average components. I think Castles of Burgundy is the poster child for this, right? But can you have a good game with bad components?
Yeah, I think that happens quite frequently, that you can, as long as you can still play the game, right? I think that happens.
But if he's saying if its game is bad and it has great components, are you still going to play it?
No, I said the other way round, but you answer whichever question you want. That's fine with me.
Okay.
So sorry.
So you're saying a good game that has bad components, is it still worth playing? Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. There's never going to be a moment, and whether you take Carpe Diem or you take Kalis or you take 100 other different Euros that, sure, they don't look the best, it doesn't matter because the gameplay is still so good that they are worth playing. I'll play Castles of Burgundy until I die, and I don't care about a deluxe version. It's still a great game.
I would say technically, yes, you can have a good game with bad components. A lot of times, though, we have so many games that I'm going to overlook that game then. And I probably would not have even tried it unless one of these two puts it in front of me.
Gameplay, I think in our opinion as a whole, gameplay is going to trump all of it. But these two guys over here like games with, for example, incredibly bad covers. Great Western Trail for this guy and Concordia for Richie. So, but the point is that getting those games off the shelf, do I pick between this game that I know has good gameplay and incredibly satisfying components, or do I pick between this game which also has good gameplay but not as great components?
Well, I will say for me, I have never in my life looked at my games on my shelf and thought, okay, I'm going to pull that game off because it has better components than that game over there. I pull a game off the shelf because I want to play the game, or I want to show an experience to new people, a game or something like that. Never have I thought, oh boy, I don't want to pull Carpe Diem off. It has bad components. No, it's a great game, period.
But wouldn't you agree with if you're showing new gamers, there's a sort of idea to table presence and that sort of thing, all other gameplay questions being equal?
No, not for me. I'd rather show them a great game or a good game with not great components than a shitty game with great components.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is very much for me, if I'm bringing new people to a game, they don't know anything about table presence. That's not a question that enters their mind. It's good games or not. And so I will bring a game that is good rather than looks good, right?
That's right.
Well, unfortunately, I think we've rather come to the conclusion that you're right. And, I mean, the world must...
Well, this is
the world must have turned upside down for us to come to this situation. But anyway, well, thanks for having a chat with me in this poorly constructed premise. I'm going to nip out now because I have a hot date tonight, and I'm hoping that we'll have some bathtub gin and listen to the chorus of zombies outside of the fence, and maybe we'll move on to the next level. So thank you very much for joining me.
Now, if you want to get in the guild, firstly, make sure you ain't snogged a zombie. Then go to the 5 Games for Doomsday Guild on Board Game Geek, number 3209. Now, don't stand there. Those zombies ain't gonna shoot themselves in the brains. Get to it.